Today I'm going to talk about the sweet spot of the paddle. If when we serve, the ball will hit the sweet spot of that paddle more consistently, then the serve should be better going across that net on average. So today I'm going to talk about how I believe we should serve so that the ball will more consistently hit the sweet spot of that paddle. What is the sweet spot of the paddle? It's this magical, theoretical area in the middle of this paddle where if you hit the ball there, it comes off consistently. And you probably already know that if you hit the ball around the edge of this paddle, it generally doesn't come off very well. It doesn't sound right, it doesn't feel right, and the ball doesn't go where we want it to go. So if we can more consistently hit the ball out of the center area of the paddle, and it varies by paddle, and the shape's kind of normally oval, I think, again, depending on the shape and the size of your paddle. But if we can control our serve such that the ball consistently comes out of that area, it'll be better going across the net. How would we consistently hit the ball out of the sweet spot of the paddle? I'm thinking it would help if the sweet spot of that paddle is in a consistent location. I talked in a previous video about the analogy of T-ball and how little kids will come up and play baseball and hit that ball off the tee and that ball's not moving, it's in a consistent location. And if we can mimic that with our ball location with the serve, then we should be able to hit that ball more consistently. So in line with that then, if my sweet spot of my paddle was always in a consistent location, even better. So now the ball and the paddle both are in a consistent location, so my serve should be better. How do we get the sweet spot of the paddle in a consistent location? So my arm's always going to be the same length as far as I know. So if I stand up here relaxed, both arms just relaxed, my arm fully extended, and I look down that sweet spot is just under my knee. So if I were to always swing with a straight arm and me standing like this, then that sweet spot's in that consistent location. So I already talked about having the ball in the same spot every time. If I were to swing like this, then the sweet spot of that paddle is always in the same location. That's a good thing. Now, obviously, if you watched my last two demos of me serving, I wasn't standing like this when I'm serving, but the theory holds true. So if I'm turned sideways, feet are apart, knees are bent, so I'm in this athletic stance when I'm serving, and I talked about holding this ball down by my knee or below because that's where the sweet spot of the paddle is. All right, so the closer this ball is, if I just swing this paddle forward, you can see that's pretty consistently going to hit the sweet spot of the paddle, which I want. My serve is going to go better that way. All right, so however low or high I am here, then the relationship between this arm, if I'm holding this down kind of with a straight arm, and as I bring this paddle forward, that's a straight arm, and my ideal hitting point is out in front, meaning that this paddle is longer than this arm, but the shoulder's further away. So it tends to contact that sweet spot of the paddle more frequently if I will do this. I'm in my position, athletic stance, feet apart, knees are bent, holding this ball down below my knee because we just saw that's where the sweet spot of the paddle is. Arm is straight, so swinging forward hits the sweet spot of that paddle. Hopefully this all makes sense. Now, one key to this is, as I'm in this position ready to hit, I've got to hold this ball low. And what that means is this front shoulder is lower than my back shoulder. So if I were to be like standing up with my shoulders the same height off of the floor, then this doesn't work anymore. So I'm not hitting the sweet spot of the paddle anymore, and I can't get this ball down below my knee. So the driving factor in this is where I'm holding this ball when I let it go. Like I talked about that ideal contact point and how far out in front, and also how low this is going to be. So what I have to do then is drop this front shoulder down to actually reach low enough to get this ball down below my knee. Now, if I turn sideways, this may be more visibly evident, right? So if I'm serving in this direction, holding this ball down, now my shoulders are not parallel to the floor anymore. I've dropped this front shoulder down, and that's the only way I can get this ball down below my knee. And then what this does is, as this paddle comes forward, it's more likely to hit the sweet spot of that paddle, and that serve goes better. So as you do this, try and get that ball ideally just below your knee, unless your arms are different lengths than mine, and people's are. Some people have long arms, some people have short arms. So, but ideally, we want to start off here and figure out kind of where the sweet spot of that paddle is, and that will give us a good average. right? And then I know I've got to be down at my knee or I've got to be down below my knee. And then I have to make that happen as I'm holding this ball in this position. I want this ball low. And then as I swing forward, I have good contact there. So again, sideways, if I'm holding this ball low, this shoulder is much lower than here. And I talked about having this paddle further away, or I will in a future video, to allow me to have more distance to swing to pick up speed. And if you watch my demo video of me serving, I'm generally starting with the paddle up here because I want that extra distance to accelerate to get this paddle going faster before it hits that ball. And that will result in a faster serve going that way. If I want to hit the sweet spot of this paddle, I have to have that ball more consistently where that sweet spot of my paddle is going to be. I want to swing with those straight arms, so I have to understand that sweet spot is down below my knee, meaning that I'm down here hitting this ball, and so that will result in a more consistent serve going that way. Now, this is also one of the reasons why I don't like those other two serve options where I'm dropping this ball and bouncing it, because if I drop this, let it bounce, then it's not going to come up and stop right at that sweet spot below my knee. It's going to come up generally higher than that or lower, or even if I get it kind of in the area, it's going to vary much more so than if I'm simply standing here holding this ball low. Same reason I don't like the volley toss serve where people will take this ball and toss it up. Now I've got to regulate how high and how far forward, back, left, or right this ball goes, and then let it still drop down to where that sweet spot of my paddle is going to be below my knee. So neither one of those serving techniques is as consistent about having this ball in the same location, and I want that ball in the same location because I'm also trying to get the sweet spot of my paddle in that same location. If you will hold this ball low, down at your knee or below, tilt this front shoulder down, left-handed or right-handed, either one. I want this front shoulder down, and then swing straight to that ball. You will hit the sweet spot of the paddle more consistently. Your serve will be better going across that net.